Welcome back, everybody. It's time we'll go ahead and get started. Hope you guys have had a good time today at the conference. Once again, I'm back, as you probably guessed by the music coming in, and I'm Scott Roby, and glad that you're coming in to spend some time with me this afternoon. So we'll just jump right in here. So reviewing yesterday, if you remember, ready, set, go, Douglas, right on. I'm ready for it, buddy. Uh, so yesterday we talked about knowing the purpose of of an activity. So knowing why you're doing stuff and why it's where it is in the curriculum. And so we want to make sure that we build off of that. So we talked about play in the beginning is important because it engages people. Play in the middle is really important because it teaches people. And we're going to talk today about a couple of things that move toward the end of the session and talk about how we play for keeps or play for the purpose of transferring that information out of the workshop into their real life settings. So today we're going to look at managing energy. We're going to look at debriefing, which is how you take the information or take an activity and move it to the next level, if you will. So we're going to look at debriefing, and that's what we really do to what I say when we play for keeps or to transfer the lesson. It's about how we draw out those teachable moments. So how we process or debrief an activity to bring out the points that are necessary to connect it to the curriculum. But then it's also something that we want to do at the end of the lesson to kind of summarize and draw out those lessons learned and transfer them in through application into real life situations. So that's kind of the playing for keeps. So let's go to the next one. So managing energy is, I know, and before I even start this, I know it's hard to get through curriculum, a curriculum lesson during a single class period, because we talked about that yesterday. And sometimes you feel pressure to run through the content and deliver it in a lecture in order to get everything in. And that's why oftentimes activities sort of get sidelined or at least minimized in people's minds, or they're nice to have if we have the time. As we talked about yesterday, I want to suggest it's something we need to be intentional about incorporating because it's actually essential to participants' learning. So I want you to drop in the chat for me right now and tell me why you think it's important to manage energy within your group. So managing that energy level within the group. Tell me why that's important to you. Drop that in the chat for me because we're gonna have to start talking again. Yep, to ensure the message gets across, so it's a way we can get them involved and engaged. Don't want to be boring. Keeping people engaged. Yep. Safety. Yeah, so there's room for all. I like to keep you engaged but not overwhelmed. Yeah, when we keep it light, we keep it fun, the energy has a good vibe about it. People don't feel overwhelmed, even if the information that we're sharing can be kind of heavy. The way in which we present it doesn't necessarily always have to be. So they can see that you're excited about the information being delivered. Wow, right, very good, Jeannie, because that's exactly right. I'm a big part of the energy in the room. And so energy, when we think about it, what if, I said before that we often sort of sideline activities because it's hard enough just to get the curriculum lesson content in a class period. But what if you could take the time that you spent trying to get youth engaged or redirecting their behavior in the room that can be somewhat distracting at times, or at least I've had kids that can be that way. Yours may be perfect in class. And you could shift that and put that energy towards the lesson. And using strategies to manage energy do just that. They actually help you to adhere to the curriculum and to get through the lessons on time. So I want to suggest that, managing that dynamic of energy is arguably the most important factor for influencing student engagement. You hear a lot about keeping participants engaged, keeping the students engaged. Well, what the heck does that really even mean, right? They're engaged. Does that just mean their eyes are open, they're looking at you? No, it doesn't, because I was that kid that I could look exactly like I was paying complete attention and I was off in dreamland somewhere, right? So that's not it. Keeping participants engaged in the curriculum means keeping them thinking about it, getting them to question and be curious and wonder about what's happening. Activities are a great way to do that. Energy is the way that we keep students actively involved. We keep them asking questions, and we keep eliciting it and getting them to voice their insights. Because when energy gets low, you guys have all seen this, as soon as energy starts to wane in the group, you start to see fidgeting, or the cell phones come out, or, for the sneaky kids, some of you are out there probably, you start to get the iPhone prayer position where the iPhone's down low and the head bows down, looking at the iPhone, trying to keep it out of your sight. So we've all experienced that. And the key is effective facilitators have to constantly be focused on the energy of the group. Where's the energy at? And how do I adjust it accordingly? Because if you want to sort of boil it down into a nutshell, energy equals engagement. So you have to have that positive energy in the room. And the reality is it doesn't just happen, because when you prepare your lessons, it takes a lot of concentration and focus, but it can be easy to focus on just delivering the content, and miss out on the fact that the group's checked out on you. And so along with planning your lesson content, you need to also weave in and keep an eye on how are you engaging in a variety of different ways to keep the students engaged in the curriculum. So next slide there, Megan. And so we want to start with level 3 energy. And level 3 energy, there's always going to be a natural drop off from the beginning to the end of a session, of a class period, right? There's always going to be a drop off in energy. And one reason that we, as facilitators, I think, engage activities in one reason for engaging activities is that we want to make sure we start our session really high with level 3 energy. Level 3 energy would sort of be the max, just like Lucy's saying there, I'm awake, right? Now, level 3 energy, actually, this idea of the different 3 levels of energy comes from The Secrets of Facilitation by Michael Wilkinson. And he says in that book, he says, the first words you speak to a group, talking about the facilitator, the first words I speak establish energy for that session, right? So if your first words come out at kind of that level one, sort of, hey, glad we're back, guys, all right? Or even just, hey, that's level one energy, and you're going to quickly lose them from there. And so instead, when you say your first words, each session, you need to consciously think about coming at them with level 3 energy. Now, that's going to vary, right? Because I can't stay at level 3 energy. I have a good friend, Greg Hawks, and if you can Google him and look up, he's a motivational speaker. And I've trained a lot with Greg, and I love him. He's a great guy, but Greg doesn't know anything but level 3, and I would even say 3.5 level of energy. And it's interesting because when we train together, I have to be the low key one to create the balance. Now, some of you are going, right, but it's true, because if we just run people for even an hour-long session at level 3 the whole way, they're going to be exhausted, right? So you can't stay there. The idea is, as an effective facilitator, we've got to bump it up to level 3 and be ready to go, start into the lesson, and we have to work with those ebbs and flows of energy. There's a little bit of advantage in some ways to having brief sessions. Y'all talked yesterday about some of your sessions are only 35 to 45 minutes long, right? In one class period in a school. That's actually can work to your advantage if you're conscious about establishing positive energy at the beginning, this higher level of energy, and then maybe doing one reset about midway through. Where this really comes into play, and you have to be super aware of it, is if you're doing like day-long groups, right? So they're going for multiple hours at a time. You have to constantly be aware of those energy levels. Likewise, as we mentioned yesterday, you also have to think from your participant shoes and think about where are they coming into the class? Is it an early morning class? Is it right after lunch? Are they really tired in the afternoon? So we have to always be conscious of their energy and bring ours. And when I say bring ours, that's part of being also being an effective facilitator is if I want to be as effective as I can be, my students are going to walk into class. I'm already going to be there and be set up and ready to go. Typically, I'll already have music going, just like when you guys came in today, because instantly they feel a different vibe when they come in the room. They're ready to have fun. I remember a guy, and I can't think of his name, but I saw him on the news a couple of years ago, and I believe he's an elementary school, I don't remember what grade, elementary school teacher in New Jersey, and he's developed an individual handshake greeting for each student, and each student is unique to them. And he remembers this with his class of like 25 students, right? And so they line up to come in his classroom, and he goes through that greeting every day with them coming into class, because he knows it's important to demonstrate that you're excited about them being here and you're already prepared to do the lesson, right? So you should be set up and ready to go. Now, some of you are saying, yeah, but I can't get into the classroom, until the previous class leaves. I get that. So have everything pre-packaged as much as you can so that your setup becomes very, very quick when you come in. Ideally, if you're co-facilitating, one facilitator can sort of take charge in the setup. The other one is out there greeting folks and welcoming them into the classroom. So be conscious about that, how you start the group. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Next slide there, Megan. because what happens is after a while, the participants, if I start at level 3, it's not going to be too long till energy slides down a notch, and they're going to be in that level 2 stage of energy, if you will. And as a facilitator, this is where my energy really plays into it a lot. This virtual is very different. Virtual is, I think, even more difficult to reach through the camera and reach out there and make that more personal connection. And having that authenticity, like Douglas mentioned here, is absolutely critical. And it is more difficult. It's certainly not impossible. But we want to be sure that we are able to, even if I'm a little sort of lower energy kind of person, I'm going to have to dial up a little extra energy for the moment. That's just a function of my job as a facilitator. So if it's not natural, that's okay. You still have that skill within you. And Christina asked about, any ideas on how to make lessons more engaging. Yeah, there are tons of ways, and one of the things to manage energy is all about using different techniques to manage energy. And we're going to talk about a few of those here in just a second. So I appreciate you giving me a perfect segue into that. So that's awesome. So we're going to start at level 3, knowing that we're going to move to level 2. This is the place where I want to try to extend that energy, because from here, it's going to slip and it's going to slide down towards that level 1 energy. So once I start seeing that slide down toward level 1, I need to be prepared to intervene, right? That's where I need to come in and reset the energy. And we'll talk about some different ways in which we can do that, both in face-to-face workshops and in virtual workshops as well. And Tracy's right, kids stare at screens all day on their own anyway. One of the things that's been really interesting that I've talked with folks about in this whole new virtual world we're in is a lot of folks are really getting fatigue, because if you think about it, a virtual classroom, if I'm a student sitting here, is so much different than being in class. Because for me, Zoom fatigue totally is real, Michelle, because if I'm in a classroom, I'm looking at a good portion, because I'm not a front row sitter. Some of you guys are front row sitters, not me. So I'm looking at mostly the backs of people's heads, right? I don't feel a lot of pressure from that. On a Zoom training, in a Zoom classroom, I'm seeing everybody's faces looking right at me. I'm seeing how they look, how handsome they are, how pretty they are, how nice their hair is, how goofy they look, all of that kind of stuff. And you know what else? I'm right there in the mix. And so I'm self-monitoring. How do I fit in? That's stressful, right? So we absolutely have to try to work with that and keep, I don't want to say distracted, but we have to keep virtual movement going on. And why Zoom fatigue versus no TV fatigue? I couldn't tell you, other than the fact that I think a big part of it is all of the monitoring that's going on. Kids are in this very self-conscious level time of life where they're trying to figure out how they fit in socially. So there's all of this comparison and self-monitoring with how do I look in comparison to everybody else, and that can be really, really stressful. So level 2 energy is critical, because that, like I said, is the sweet spot for where learning occurs most effectively, I think. one way that I can really convey a higher level of energy, sometimes it's level 3, sometimes it's at level 2 energy, is using my voice, right? But when I talk about using my voice as a vehicle for inserting energy into the group, it's way more than just volume, right? Because when I'm using my voice, it's creating a different modulation. It's really emphasizing key words, or it's more distinct enunciation or pace. I may pick up the pace, or if it's something that I really want them to think and focus on, I might actually kind of slow down the pace and start wondering with them, wow, how would this actually work, right? And so I'm going to actually slow the pace down to engage the participants even more. So hopefully that makes sense on level 2. We'll go to the next slide, Megan, because then we hit level 3 or level 1, sorry. Level 1 energy is important because the participants, you'll see them at this point, they're trying, right? They're struggling to stay awake. You may see, usually what happens is the hands come down, and they're sort of at their side. Eyes you won't be getting that crisp, clear eye contact. You may even see the sleepy baby eyes going on. But this is a time where I need to pay close attention, because at level 1 energy, they're trying to hang there with me, but there's little or no engagement actually happening. So this is absolutely a time when I have to reset the energy in a big way. So that means shifting and doing something completely different, because if I don't, as we go down these levels from level 3 to level 2 to level 1, the slide becomes much quicker, right? And so next slide, Megan, it's really a quick jump from level 1 energy to level 0 energy. And at this point, you've lost them, and it's going to take a major reset at this time. So one of the things, and this is where play comes into the equation, one of the things that, and I said earlier, is fun or play equals engagement. It's just sort of that simple. When energy levels are high in the room, it's more fun, both for me to facilitate, and it's more fun for them to be in the group and participating, because participants' ability to learn is directly proportional to how much fun they're having while they're learning. That's just an inevitable equation that you can't get away from. So if it's not fun anymore, they're probably not learning. Does that make sense, hopefully, to everybody? Thoughts, questions? Pause for just a minute. Because here's what I want to do. I think we're at a time that we need to practice. Instructor energy is key, Carolyn. Absolutely right. And that's why it really can help to have a co-facilitator, because you all can play off of each other and play off of each other's strengths and support each other's challenges a lot. Great. I'm glad you guys are hitting this. So what I want to do for us is I want us to do a quick little energizer. And there are probably, I would say most of you all have probably used Pair and Share as a technique in which to manage energy within the room. in a face-to-face group, pair and share is primarily used for, you know, facilitators will have people pair up with somebody, move out across the room, because that tends to break up the sort of BFF things. And I'm going to break you up right now, or actually Megan is. We're going to break you up into groups, and you'll have 3 to 4 in your group. So it's going to be a small group, but we're going to give you a few minutes to talk with each other. And here's what I want you to talk about while you're in your breakout room right now. All right. So I want you to introduce yourself to your partners there. And it doesn't have to be anything big, just a very quick little introduction of your name and you know, your city maybe that you're in. But then I want you to share one thing that you've learned about yourself during the pandemic, during your time at home or during this pandemic. It can be a new insight that you've had about yourself. It could be something that you've confirmed, you know, about your personal awareness since you've had so much time with yourself now. Or it could be something that's resonated with you, about the pandemic, could be about the Black Lives Matter movement, could be about working remotely. It can literally be anything. So share with your folks one insight. So Megan will send you into the rooms right now, and we'll come back in just a minute. So talk amongst yourselves.
Okay, Scott, I think we're good to go.
Great, thanks. So a parent share, you know, that's what we just did. Probably that's about the most, I think, common or one of the most popular types of an energizer that we can do. You can do it in a face-to-face group. You've probably all done that. But as you see on some platforms that allow breakout rooms, you can break out, and you can do that very, very briefly. Have a real quick discussion. Let them talk with each other. It works really well because it allows people to interact with folks that even in a face-to-face classroom, they may not match up with that person. That might not be a person they typically pair with. So it can add to and create a really interesting dynamic. Now, it can certainly create some discomfort, but that's not altogether a bad thing. You know, anytime we're learning something new, there is a level of discomfort to it at first. So that's one technique, would be like a pair and share. There are other energizers that you can use, like quick little goofy games, something like gotcha, or a pop quiz activity where you ask silly questions that have to be answered by the group. Could be something like that. Other techniques that you can use to just do a little infusion or infuse a little energy into the group could simply be it could simply be my energy and forcing the group to physically track with me. Now, this doesn't work in a virtual setting, but in a face-to-face setting, I rarely am up front in the front of the classroom for very, very long. I'm always wandering around, right? So I may talk from the side of the room, from the back of the room. I'm all over the place, because as I'm moving, what do you think the class is doing? They're turning and tracking with me because they're like, what's this guy doing, right? Because in their typical experience in a classroom, they get taught from up front. I'm just wandering around through them, right? And so it's forcing them to track with me, and they'll pay attention and be a little more attentive. If for no other reason, they're going to wonder why I'm headed their way, right? And so it starts to make them wonder what the heck I'm doing. It also tells people that nobody can hide in this group. We're all part of it together, right? And so we just wander around. Another technique could be anything that's a people mover type of an activity. I would say parent shares can be considered a people mover, because you could have them pair up with somebody across the room and move to separate areas within the classroom. In this case, it's virtual movement, so they virtually move into a room. In another session, it may be something like rotating flip charts, where I have key words or a topic or a concept, each on an individual flip chart, and we just let the group roam around and write on there what they remember about that concept or their thoughts on that concept. So any kind of a people mover works. The key is have a variety of things in your back pocket so that you can constantly mix it up. All right, so now we're going to move and we're going to talk about debriefing, because debriefing is where we're going to draw out those teachable moments. And this is a 3-step sequence. So just to set it up and put a framework to it, this sequence can be used if we're coming out of an activity. We're going to debrief that activity to find out how they saw the activity go down, what they think it means, and then how it connects to the topic that we're discussing. So there's going to be that 3-step movement that progresses them from describing their experience to interpreting their experience to then applying their experience or connecting it to the content. That can be done with an activity. It also can be done, and I say should be done, at the end of the session as well, because it works to summarize everything and get them looking forward, outward from the group. So the first one, next slide, Megan, is what? So the first series of questions that I'm going to ask are what-based questions. And that's where I'm just asking for the facts. I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask them, what did you see? Because I want them to tell me what was the substance of the group interaction, what happened to the individuals involved, how did they play with each other, right? How did it work? I want to hear from their perspective what they observed. And so well-phrased what questions lead the group back to look at key time periods in the activity and to really zero in on what occurred during that activity or that portion of the activity. And so I'm going to be asking things like, okay, so what went on during that activity? Tell me what you saw or what you observed happening, right? So I'm going to hear from them just simple facts of what they observed. What did they see? What did they hear? What did you or what did the group do when they were presented with the challenge? What were some of the key interactions that you noticed that contributed to the success of the group, right? Because we're going to stay strength-based and focused on what worked. And so what were some key interactions you noticed that really contributed to the success? How did your actions contribute to the success, right? So I'm going to gather that information of what they saw, because the key is starting with what questions in the sequence sets the foundation for the entire debrief and really sets the foundation for drawing out the teachable moment or drawing out the lesson that they learned that at this point in time, they may not even realize they learned anything. They thought they were just playing a game, right? And so I'd like to hear real quick from you. So drop in the chat for me. What benefit do you think what questions have for the students, right? So how does it benefit them when we ask what questions? Because I always think it helps me if I understand the why of things. Why does it benefit them? Oh, definitely makes them think. Brings their voice in, gives them a chance to be heard. That's true. Yeah, makes them recall. We're not quite thinking about the application just yet, but we're wanting them to reflect on the activity, because things can move so fast during an activity that they'll actually miss some of the details. So we really want them to think back carefully about exactly what was said, what went on, what they did. And the what questions really allow the students to recount and illuminate specific behaviors that occurred during the activity. And that really sets the stage then, once we've isolated and identified some of those key interactions. Now we can move to the next stage, or the phase of the debriefing in the so what. And this is where we're going to ask them to interpret what that actually meant. So go to the next slide, Megan. So what questions are the second step in an effective debrief. And so what questions, just like it says, it's about having the students, now we've identified these key moments. So what does that mean, right? And it may simply be asking them what their interpretations, or what are the implications of what just happened. And at times I'll link it to the content during this stage. So it could be, so what does, say they identified an interaction that Christina stepped up and she took the lead in an activity, and she made sure everybody's voice was heard in the planning process. So I can isolate that and say, so what does having a leader to make sure, what does having everybody's voice in sharing their ideas, what does that do to healthy communication within the group, right? And so I'm going to ask them to interpret what that means. Typically, things are going to be framed within the context of our lesson. So for example, if we're talking about communication, I may just simply start off with, many of you said that in the what, that the communication was a key thing that helped the group accomplish the task. So what did that communication mean for you as an individual group member? So I'm going to have them interpret. Oh, next slide, please, Megan, on the so what. There we go. So I'm going to have them interpret what that means, and I don't know what's going to come out of it. This is the fun part of facilitation to me, is because I'm going to play off of their insights. Now, you may have Johnny and Harry that are in the back of the room, and they're just yucking it up and they're throwing out silly answers. I'll acknowledge that, but I'm not going to latch on to them, right? But then I might have somebody like Richard, who rarely speaks, but man, when he talks, it's like super insightful. So he hits it right on the mark. I'm going to grab onto that and say, wow, let's talk about that. And we're going to chew on that as a group together. So my part is planning the questions up front, because out of the activity, I know kind of where I want to steer the conversation, but I want it to feel in general like it's generated by them, right? So I'm really functioning as a guide in this process. So what does that tell us about healthy communication? So what does that do to connect to what we've been talking about today, right? Where does that connect with what we're talking about? So what would having personal boundary lines look like for you, right? I'm going to take it and make it personal to them and ask them to give me a personal interpretation, because now I start to get a check-in on, are they really getting it? Or do we really need to stay on this topic a little longer before we move on, right? Do they have the basics? Is it time to move on? And as a facilitator, the key is our responses and reframing guide the individual members to begin to generalize and conceptualize what they learned from the activity. Like I said before, a lot of times they just thought they were having fun. It is incumbent upon me then to start framing that up. So tell me real quick in the chat, what do you think the benefit is for students to have so what questions? How does that benefit them? Drop it in the chat there. One certainly is thinking. Sorry. Give students a chance to voice their viewpoint. Yeah, absolutely. This is a great time to bring in the whole variety of perspectives and vantage points, because everybody's going to see the same thing differently, right? And so it really generates a rich discussion around what happened. More times than not, you're going to hear people say, wow, I missed that, or I didn't even see that, right? Because I'm just seeing it through my lens, not someone else's. And so I hear all of those different views. It's absolutely critical thinking. And that's developmentally right on the cusp of where a lot of these youth that we work with are. So it's really moving them to have that critical thinking and to have some self-reflection, which is also not really typically where they're at. Learning what they're thinking, what they have in mind. So an example of how you would use this in presentations would be simply just that. In a virtual setting, I would simply pose the exact same questions and allow them to respond either through chat, depending upon the group. Could be chat, or it could just be part of the verbal discussion, however you want to do it. So the great thing with the debriefing process, it's not that there's nothing lost, right? Because virtual is different, but it really translates fairly well to a virtual environment. And the key with this so what, they're starting to really stew and brew on, wow, what are those things we identified that happened? What do they actually mean? And so then we get to the next point. Next slide, Megan, because here's the launch pad that you guys have all been wanting to get to, but I've been reining us back because it's a step process. Now we get to the now what questions. And now what questions are where we make that application. It's where they take and transfer into real life what played out and what they learned from a game or an activity. And so in now what, again, this can be around an activity. It could be the final takeaways or points of a lesson as well. So it may look something like this. I would say, now based on what you've said about communication being the key to working well together as a group in this activity, now what would you do differently at your workplace or in your classroom or with your partner to increase a sense of communication and that connection and camaraderie with your co-workers, with your partner, with your classmates, with your teammates, right? So I start to ask them, so now what could you do differently to repeat or apply the things that you learned in this activity to help you be more successful in a real life situation? Everybody with that? It also could look something like this and say, well, we've talked a lot about communication strengths, how it strengthens trust in relationships, makes it easier to work on issues as they come up. Now, what could be your first next step toward increasing healthy communication or establishing a healthy boundary with your partner, right? Because again, that allows them the space to apply it to their own situation. It doesn't have to be this broad general application that applies to everyone. That's probably not very useful. I want them to think about how they can take it and apply it, right? And so they get to place that into whatever point in life that they see it being most useful. All in all, then, by letting them do this individually, we want the whole group to make a practical application of their newly acquired skill, or even just the awareness of a new dynamic that went on, right? We want them to take that and figure out how they can integrate that into real life situations. So these transfer points are really most powerful when it comes from the students. There's a real temptation here, and I'll just be honest with you. I've seen lots of people, and I've even fallen into this trap some, because at this stage of the debriefing, we want so badly for them to get it, right? That we start summarizing for them. We start explaining to them where the connections are to the curriculum content we've been talking about. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not about you making the connection for them. This is the time for us to ask really well-crafted questions and let the connections be made by the students, right? Spend your energy up front planning out well-crafted now what questions, because they're going to, the lesson is going to stick much better if it's them telling themselves rather than me making those connections for them. So ask questions. You can even spin it sometimes, at this stage, once somebody has because you'll always have that kid that spouts off exactly the right answer. And so that's the time when I like to spin it around and play devil's advocate and say, if say we're talking about how you take a pause or a timeout, when you're getting locked up in an argument with your partner or with another person, I might say, okay, now wait a minute. We're talking about taking this break or timeout, because you're starting to wind up in an argument with your partner. And yeah, I get how I could do, but you couldn't use that at work where with your boss or supervisor, right? Because they don't know anything about it. So you couldn't use it there, could you? Right? And I'll spin it back on them, play devil's advocate, and I'll make them explain to me why it actually could be used in another setting, right? So this stage can take many different looks. It can look very differently at different times. So as a facilitator, we want to use these transfer points to bounce things out into real life, and don't rush it. One of the worst things that we can do is suddenly look at the clock and we're running up against time and we blow right by tying the lesson up in a bow, right? Give time to do the debriefing. Get time for the lesson to settle in, take hold, and let them look forward on how they can use it outside of the group. All right, so that being said, Megan, I want you to, if you would, advance the slide. I want to do one last thing with us before we finish. So I'd like to hear your kind of now what, if you will. So what I want you to do is I want you to just look around your area, in your purse, wherever you can grab. I want you to grab a random item. Grab it real quick. Everybody grab it and just have it in your hand. Hold it up. Got it right there. Now, You may think that's a random item, but in fact, this very accurately represents something that you're taking away from our time together today. And that's exactly what I'm excited to hear about. So we're going to hear from about 3 or 4 of you. And what I want you to do is I want you to, you can put a reaction, a thumbs up reaction, or just drop in the chat that you would like to volunteer to share with us what this item means and how it represents what you can do going forward. So I will start. You'll notice I have a little brace for those of you who've ever had like carpal tunnel. This thing goes on and provides that extra support for simple tasks, right? When my wrist is hurting. My takeaway is when we're able to make a debrief really effective and translate it to real life, it gives people the added support to actually take something that they learned in class and really use it in real life, right? So that's the beauty of it. So somebody else, who else has one? Megan, I'll take any of those. So if you want to, Megan will unmute you. You could share your item and what it means to you. Probably just about 3 people.
You had quite a few people respond there in the chat, Scott.
I see what they have, but I want to know what it means because only they know what it means.
Let's start with Tracy Baxter. She said she has a glitter pin. Tracy, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
Go ahead.
I like things that sparkle. So I have a lot of glitter gel pens.
Okay, and how does that represent your takeaway from today?
It's something that I really enjoy that's kind of personal to me. It's my weird, quirky thing. So I think if the students can make some of the material personal to them as well, they'll take that home.
Nice, thank you. All right, who else? 2 more.
We have Selena Wells. Selena, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Megan. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
Sure. I grabbed my my lunch receipt, and the way that applies to our session is, you know, after you've finished, the debriefing is important. Kind of like my receipt. I've eaten, I'm done, and the receipt is kind of not important to me until it's time for me to check my bank statement or use money or something else. So my takeaway is just to slow down and actually review what we've discussed and talk about how we'll apply it later in life. Because what happened in the past was important, especially if it was the past 45 minutes of the session.
Nice, nice. Thank you. Thank you very much, Selena. One more brave soul. Come on.
Let's see here. Do we have anybody else who wants to volunteer? Looks like we have Alyssa. Give me just 1 minute here. Alyssa, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes.
Go ahead.
So the item I picked up off of my desk, the first item I looked at is a Ask My Pronouns button that I got from another meeting I had earlier on last year. I just think it's important to encourage inclusivity and be thoughtful of others.
Oh, yeah. Great point. Yeah. Everybody to be respectful and thoughtful of others. Yeah, because we all have different experiences. We all have different perspectives, and they all have value. And the more that I listen to others and add them to mine, the more I benefit. Yeah, great. Love that, Alyssa. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, as you see, there are any final questions? We're kind of at the end of our time. So Megan, if you'll put up the next slide, remember my contact information, scott.roby@publicstrategies.com. Please, if you have questions, shoot me an email, and I'm happy to talk with you at any given time. And I've been really honored you spent 2 afternoons with me. So thank you for being here, and hope you have a great day tomorrow. So thank you all.
Thank you, Scott. We'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Melissa.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Well, we appreciate Scott being willing to share really practical tips and strategies with us here to close out our second day of this training. While we're waiting for just a minute, I want to direct you to look at your chat. We're going to be posting the links there again, just like yesterday, to that participant feedback opportunity. And I believe you also have access to that through an email too, so you could check there also, but look in the chat, and that keeps disappearing, so I'm going to pull it up here. Okay, and while you're before you fill in that feedback, I just wanted to take a few moments. We have some time blocked off here at the end of the day to give you a chance to fill in that feedback. And yesterday, I think we only had about 28 folks fill out that participant feedback. And so I would really ask and challenge you to take a few moments before you forget and rush off to the next thing, as we're all going to do. Just if you wouldn't mind filling that out and giving us some feedback, we would really appreciate it. It really does help us gauge what's resonating and what kind of things that maybe we could improve. These topical trainings are really designed to be a benefit to you that are really doing the work. And so we want to make sure that we are doing that well. So we really do truly value your honest and anonymous feedback. So please fill that out. We won't know it's coming from you, so you can be really honest. If any of you were in Tracy and I's session earlier today on receiving feedback, we are welcoming it. We are ready for it. We are really curious on what you're thinking and how you're feeling about it. And so really quickly, just as Scott had mentioned, the importance of debriefing, let's do that really quickly here at the end of the day. If you are a participant in, well, actually, let's do this. Would you share your key takeaway from the first session you attended today? So, and then let us know what track you were in. So say, track 1 was the going beyond what is taught to understanding how effective facilitators teach. That was me presenting. So if you're in that session on self-regulation and co-regulation, you can say track 1 and your key takeaway from that session. Track 2, the first session was understanding the optimal health model in the context of SRAE with Dr. Diane Foley. And so if you were in that session, you could say track 2 with your key takeaway from that. And as we're mentioning that, I heard that there were maybe a little bit some obstacles and glitches there. We really apologize for that. We appreciate your grace as we navigate things remotely and rely on technology. Our best laid plans sometimes don't go exactly the way we had intended. So we appreciate you hanging with us through that. And I appreciate that some of you, let's see here. Okay, so Megan shared the links there for that feedback and or for the participant feedback. And so you can access that. Let's see. You see a few of you thinking through your key takeaways. And if you can share that, the benefit here is that for those of you that are maybe in track 1, you can learn just a little bit, get a little taste of what those in track 2 learned today. And so if you have a colleague that's maybe attending track 2, you'll be able to ask them for more details, and it might pique your interest in finding out some more about what they learned. Okay, and then since it's the end of the day, I know it's kind of takes a minute here for to type everything, but if you can move on then to session 2 for track 1, that was the curriculum fidelity strategies with Dr. Lynette Tanis and Connie Huber. If you were in track 1, you can list that and your key takeaway from that session. And then the same for track 2, which was the conducting observations and giving feedback session with Tracy and I. If you were in that one and can share your key takeaway, we would appreciate that. And then finally, all of us got to hear from Scott Roby here at the end. So if there's a key takeaway that you can share from this session. And I know that that's going to create Megan's probably. Megan keeps trying to post the participant feedback. I appreciate that, Megan. That'll give folks a chance to click on it. And if you want to, you scroll through the chat to go ahead and keep finding that. And again, it's listed in an email to you also. But we love hearing your responses and the things that really seem to stick from the day. That's good. Awesome. I appreciate that some of you are taking the time to share that. And lastly, I just want to give this last little portion of time for you to share any additional kind of thoughts or reflections or things that you'd like to share with the group at large. And while you're pondering that, you can also take the time to click on that link and fill out the participant feedback. And we'll hang tight with you while you fill that out. Oh, and I see here that you'll get an email at the end of tomorrow with links to fill in the participant feedback tools also. So we're going to just try and get it to you in all sorts of ways to make sure you are able to find it and locate it easily and give us your thoughts. Great. Okay. Well then, again, we're going to leave the session open here until 4:45 so that you're able to fill in your participant feedback. There is a reminder that all the recordings and presentations and handouts will be available on the Exchange about a week after this topical training has concluded. So I know that's always a question. We saw that a few times in the chat there. Well, just as a reminder, you guys all seem to figure it out for today, but tomorrow you will follow along on your agenda according to your track and click those links to join in for the sessions. We have 2 sessions and then we'll have some closing remarks also. So we look forward to seeing you in those opportunities. Does anyone else have anything else you'd like to share before we close out for today? Oh, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your appreciation that you're sharing with the presenters there in the chat. That's great. Thank you. All right, Megan, thank you for posting those links several times. Again, if you haven't located it yet, scroll through your chat, click on that, take just a couple minutes to let us know what's going through your head from all this information you received today. And we really look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you all so much for your time.